Stephen tries. This guy makes me cruise. Remain, hang on. I might watch that in a bit. I'm gonna just react to this so I can eat. Okay.
2022. Sure, it's the age range on your divorced dad's Tinder, but it's also the year everything went back to normal. Kind of.
I've worked my absolute arse off to get where I am now.
Back in January, Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, COVID was rife, and YouTubers collabing with Speed was just something done at parties. At the beginning of the month, Molly May went from humping fury to sparking it. As she stated, we all have the same 24 hours in a day to achieve stuff. So inspiring. Molly May smashes through the glass ceiling and then gets her assistant to sweep it up. Elsewhere, reports emerged that 2 parties were held at Downing Street during lockdown. One was even on the night before Prince Philip's funeral. That is so rotten, said the Undertaker. Thankfully, we managed to obtain some of the footage from the gathering.
That is adorable. I'm so glad that you like it. Uwu? Ooby wooby?
Good boy! And that's why we call it Downing Street! Good.
Prime Minister, shouldn't we be isolating?
Nah, the only thing I'm trying to lock down is a piece of fatty. Oh, he doesn't help out, eh?
What about the guidelines?
Don't you worry.
Pasta.
I've been guiding lads up my nose all night. How about a top up? Oh, yes, please. Could you help with the ball? Fat chance of that happening.
It was almost impossible for me to sweat.
In February, the Queen celebrated her 70th anniversary. And she did
the
it in
real
style
J-Man, think of the gifted
by giving
sub.
£12 million to Prince Andrew for an
Welcome in, Deal
out-of-court
Bob. Good to
settlement.
have you.
I mean,
Thank you so
fucking
much,
hell.
man. And it's
We
your
live in a
first gift
country
sub to the
which,
channel
during
as well.
a cost of
Thank
living
you.
crisis, would rather give away £12 million of
Thank you, I
taxpayers'
appreciate
money
that.
than rightfully jail a paedophile, allegedly. But what are you doing about this, Stephen, I hear you ask? Well, for every Prince Andrew joke I make in this video, I'll donate £250 to a children's charity. Let's help the kids rather than help ourselves to them.
Oh
That one
my
doesn't
god.
count. Oh, get off! Later that month, tragedy struck as Vladimir Putin's Russia invaded the Ukrainian border. An old man hadn't crossed the line like that since Prince Andrew's last visit to Epstein Island. Rack it up, guys. Storm Eunice hit Britain with winds of over 120 miles per hour. That many people haven't been blown away since Curtis Pritchard's performance in Hollyoaks.
Hi, Jimmy.
Keep my wife's name!
In March, there was controversy.
That was in March? He got slapped in March? I thought it was more recently than that.
At the Oscars, when Will Smith smacked Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife. Talk about a punchline. Speaking of controversial bald heads, Andrew Tate came into the limelight. Clips of his misogynistic views went viral as he gained a large following. That many virgins hadn't been entertained since the fleshlight was invented. Later that month, the world was divided as 2 rivals went at it. Step aside, Russia and Ukraine. Out the way, Bloods and Crips. Move back, James Corden and Diabetes. It's time for Doors versus Wheels.
Oh no.
I'm still not sure who
Remember
won.
that?
I'm about to disrupt a football match.
It's a cycle lane, twat. In April, Boris Becker was jailed for 2.5 years for tax evasion. He hadn't been that ashamed at a court since losing to Tim Henman. Elsewhere, Bazinga announced he was becoming a father.
The real J-Man,
meaning
what
Harry
the
wouldn't
fuck,
be the only
really?
sideman to
Minus
be feeling a bump
30.
this year. And lastly,
insane.
Just Stop Oil protests increased, with one man tying himself to the goalpost at an Everton game.
Well, he's just stood there looking clueless, the little moppers.
Yeah, enough about Lampard though. What did you make of the protester? But that wasn't the end of the protests. There were people vandalising art, buildings, and even gluing themselves to roads. I've managed to track down one of these wacky hippies to see what it's all about. Bernie, hi.
Don't!
That better be cum.
Funnily enough, it was tractors I was looking at.
In May, N-Dubs announced their return. This was like the second coming of Christ, if Jesus turned water into WKD and gave chlamydia to the 5,000.
Bit of a cheap joke, that.
You piss off. MP Neil Parish was caught watching porn in the House of Commons. He claimed he was
what?
searching about tractors when he came across a website with a very similar name. What was it? Cornhub? Plough Me Hard? Spread your seed all over me batty.com? Excuse me.
My dog stepped on a bee.
In June, it was the Queen's Platinum Jubilee party. Prince Andrew couldn't go due to coronavirus, or in his case, COVID. I thought she was 19. Speaking of sitting on the throne,
Dominated
the
tractors?
Elvis
Oh my
film
God.
starring Austin Butler came out to rave reviews. We actually have a special clip from one of the most moving scenes. After 2 months, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial concluded. Heard had to pay over $10 million to Johnny Depp for damaging his reputation. What did she
Shit.
do? Cast him in Charlotte Gnomes? R. Kelly was sentenced to prison for 30 years, or as he put it, a cheeky pair of 15s. And on the 24th of June, the US Supreme Court overturned the Roe versus Wade ruling, meaning abortion was now illegal in many states. These old men deciding what to do with women's bodies. Just cut it out, will you?
Hasta la vista, baby.
In July, temperatures exceeded 40 degrees for the first time ever in the UK. Was it
Russian,
global
I
warming,
agree, man, I'm
or
so
just Prince
confused.
Andrew burning his hard drives again? And on the 7th of July, Boris Johnson resigned as Prime Minister. And what a legacy he leaves behind. From mishandling the pandemic and killing more nans than Harold Shipman, to underfunding the NHS. I mean, the only people to work harder than them during COVID was the fucking Downing Street DJs. Oh, good riddance, you big blonde bellend. In more good news, England's Lionesses won the European Championships, beating Germany 2-1 in the final. I haven't seen that many women kicking off in boots since the January sales. And lastly, a story broke that Prince William was having an affair. Apparently his love of pegging was too much for partner Kate, and he saw another woman to fulfil his needs. The last royal to get rear-ended like that was his mother.
'Cause I ain't 14 stone, that's why.
In August,
Did that come out as true? Like he was actually having an affair? Like so Kate got cheated on? Is that actually true?
Anthony Joshua lost his rematch to Usyk in the Middle East. He reacted by throwing the belts out the ring and delivering a speech so bad it could have been sponsored by Hermes. Mind you, he's not the first man to take a pounding in Saudi Arabia and lose his head. Later that month, drought was declared in the UK amid the driest period since 1976. Oh, it hasn't rained for a couple of weeks and my lilies are thirsty. Dry period. Try being a virgin for 23 years. That's a dry period. I imagine. And lastly, the Nightmare KSI fought 2 people in one night. The last man to have that much action in the ring was Prince William.
Why am I even asking questions?
Liz Truss was appointed Prime Minister, becoming the 3rd ever female to do so. With her and the Queen at the helm, it was a real time for girl power. But it wasn't to be. 2 days later, Queen Elizabeth II passed away. For William and many others, her death left a hole that no strap-on could fill. Charles inherited the throne and Andrew got the corgis, bringing a whole new meaning to the term dog groomer. The country was literally brought to a standstill as people queued for hours to see the Queen lying in state. We managed to grab a word with some of the lucky few in the queue.
I'll be licking my stamps a little bit harder tomorrow.
I'm absolutely devastated. I adored Bohemian Rhapsody.
Queuing all day for that. If I wanted to see someone make no movements in a box, I'd watch Everton.
Lastly, the Sidemen charity match was a great success, with over 2.6 million concurrent viewers. Although the biggest stream that day came from Chris and Dee's eyes when he watched his performance back.
I see good things about Hitler also.
In October, TV show This Morning ran a competition offering to pay energy bills as a prize. Of course, Philip Schofield keeps his house warm by spit roasting teenagers, allegedly. Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion, making McDonald's the second biggest company to be owned by a clown. James Corden was in the spotlight when he was banned from a top New York restaurant and accused of stealing comedians' jokes. He responded to both events by saying, "Is it 'cause I is black?" Elsewhere, Kanye swapped Kim K for KKK as he declared his admiration for the Nazi party.
Bro, I'm telling you now, Stephen is so smart. Like, how did you... oh, my God.
After repeated anti-Semitic comments, Adidas said, "Hey, it's 3 stripes and you're out." Never mind. We managed to get an exclusive interview with Mr. West himself. Mr. West, thank you very much for joining us. Now, your comments recently made you a millionaire. Of course, you were a billionaire before that. I've actually got a few more of those, if you like that. We know a lot of rappers like to talk about the hood, but theirs aren't white and pointy. You recently said Jewish people run everything, but the basketballs that ran a train on your ex-wife aren't Jewish. Can you... Where did he go?
Brass, don't get me singing, I'm terrible.
In November, Matt Hancock was paid £400,000 to be a contestant on I'm a Celebrity. Hey, if I wanted to see a Tory chewing a rat's cock, I'd watch the footage of him and his secretary. I'm a celebrity. These people in charge are dirty, lying scum. Not my words, but their ex-wives. And he came third! Who's going to be on it next year? Prince Andrew? And there's a real predator in the jungle. Nope. Then the World Cup of Qatar started.
Honestly, Dwayne,
the tournament
is
received a
bad.
lot of criticism due to the human rights record. But one footballer who wasn't afraid of getting his arse licked was Cristiano Ronaldo when he was interviewed by Piers Morgan. And lastly, Balenciaga were cancelled for posting pictures of children holding teddy bears in BDSM gear. Their clothing was less River Island and more Epstein Island.
It was written in the stars.
In December, the World Cup was well underway, and the England team really raised the bar. Unfortunately, Kane's penalty still went over it. Ultimately, it was Messi and Argentina who lifted the trophy. Of course, it wasn't just Kane's penalties that had been missed this year. We lost some great people along the way. Let's take a look.
Bro, that one broke my fucking heart. Morpheus.
So there we have it, 2022, a year in which we gained our freedom and lost our minds. All that's left for me to do now is donate this money to charity. There you go. Of course, that is prop money, and this is just a highly trained actor. I have actually donated. See it here. If you want to get involved, click the link in the description. On that note, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Love a bit of Stephen Tries.